Visiting Sri Lanka has been on our minds for a long time, with lots of time to plan, but in our true style, however, it was a very last-minute arrangement, reflected unfortunately in the cost of our flights. All we knew is that we wanted to rent a tuk-tuk and have an adventure. It was definitely the adventure we hoped for, but not what we expected. Any preconceived ideas we may have had about the country as being India's little brother were dispelled quite quickly, and we thoroughly enjoyed what this special country had to offer. We flew from Sydney to Melbourne, then Melbourne to what we thought was Colombo, Sri Lanka's capital. The airport, however, was much closer to the city an hour north, Negombo. We stayed not far from the main beach in Negombo in a cute little villa-style accommodation called the Nature Village. Taking full advantage of their pool and hospitality, it was the perfect base to start our travels. We explored the beaches, and on our first few steps onto the sand, we were helping out fishermen to pull their boat in from the surf. We explored many sites in Negombo, including the fish markets, Dutch and English colonial relics, and of course the restaurants and bars along the beach. Oh, yummy. Tuna. It's a dried fish. Locals were more than happy to give us a tour, with an awkward discussion about how much it was all going to cost us, playing on our minds the whole time, whilst also contemplating how we could run away. Oh, these little ones. Negombo, being a largely Christian part of Sri Lanka, we were astounded by how many nativity scenes we came across out the front of hotels, restaurants, and people's homes. The plan to photograph each one we came across faded quite quickly. We collected our tuk-tuk after obtaining lessons. Our licenses were organised for us by the company before we arrived for a small fee. We were then on our way, heading to Kandy. We found out later in our trip when we started having to backtrack that Kandy may not have been the most sensible first stop.
About 5 meters, Adam.
Our tuk-tuk was bright blue, decked out in gangster decals referring to rappers and brands that I obviously have no idea about. It seemed a very odd match for us somehow, but we all soon became fast friends. Well, fast friends might be an exaggeration due to the fact we had electrical and other mechanical problems on our first day, and the speed limit for tuk-tuks in Sri Lanka is only 40 kilometers per hour.
If I open up my eyes, I can see the skies. I can see the sky. See the sky. See the sky. Watch
Yeah. Who's your favourite footballer?
Messi! Messi!
We arrived in Kandy after some hair-raising encounters with traffic. Hair-raising only due to our inexperience at this point. We also remarkably encountered a large elephant on the back of a flatbed truck. Kandy is a mountain city based around a large lake. We met a really nice tuk-tuk driver who happily drove us around in our tuk-tuk to see the sights, whilst also liaising with a local mechanic to fix our few small problems. The botanical gardens in Kandy was an incredible highlight of our journey. Tropical plants, beautifully maintained gardens, and interesting European tourists made for us a really nice experience. Check out this cactus house. We explored the Buddhist temple on the hill, the main attraction being the massive Buddha statue which perches high above Kandy looking down on the city and lake. war cemetery and memorial was also another one of those experiences where we knew we weren't in India because they maintained things so nicely. A Second World War memorial marking the invasion of the Japanese. Graves from Sri Lankans, Indians, British people, Canadians, Australians and East Africans were all there commemorating invasions on both sides of the Sri Lankan coast by the Japanese in 1942. We also experienced a show in the Sri Lankan Cultural Society. We then explored the Temple of the Sacred Tooth, which was an ancient temple built on the lakeside. Leaving Kandy, we felt a little more confident in our driving abilities and we headed north to Sigiriya. Sigiriya is the home to the famous Lion Rock, the landmark on which is built an ancient palace. Was home to Buddhist monks over the years and surrounded by moats, fortifications, and there can also be found ancient palace relics and Buddhist stupas. Being greeted by more of a tourist vibe, we were also greeted by tourist prices. Being early in our trip, this was not too much of a concern, and we enjoyed bars, restaurants, amazing views, and wonderful hospitality. Sadly, I also encountered an injury due to lack of streetlights and general clumsiness. We were fortunate enough to have our own private jeep safari where we saw beautiful scenery and enjoyed some very close encounters.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Oh, yeah. Climbing Lion Rock was an epic feat in the raging humidity and with quite a sore toe, but it was well worth it.
Okay, I get the picture. Don't growl at me, mate.
Close by Lion Rock is another hill, Kudurangala. Another epic climb, but with wonderful sunset views of Lion Rock itself.
Oh, Jesus. We're pretty much there. Yeah, definitely should have bought beers.
In high spirits after the great experience in Sigiriya, we headed to the famed Nuwara Eliya, or Little England as it's known. Not sure if it was the insane mountainous drive in our humble tuk-tuk or the underwhelming experience we had there, but we were not so fussed with this place. The scenery, however, was beautiful, and the colonial heritage that has continued to be preserved was quite lovely to experience, juxtaposed amongst Buddhist and Hindu culture. After only a short stay in Nuwara Eliya, we were keen to get back into a place that was more our style, with a bit more happening and more things to see. We decided to make the short journey to Ella, another mountain town. Being greeted by a fuller tourist population and a town that was obviously catering to Westerners, we immediately felt quite spoilt for bars, restaurants, and shops. We climbed Little Adams Peak and saw some incredible scenery, as well as getting our steps in to work off the cocktails.
How did you do it in one swoop? He doesn't know. He's got chunks of it.
Although only a bridge, the Nine Arches Bridge is a famous tourist hotspot where people gather to watch the tourist train from Kandy to Ella go by. Also, a very popular Instagram location. Leaving Ella, with an enlivened sense of adventure, we headed towards the jungle. We were lucky enough to have access to the Tuk Tuk Rental WhatsApp group who shared information and ideas about travel options. We came across a place that was off the tourist trail but came with amazing reviews. The Kingdom Eco Lodge and Farm. Close by the famous Yala National Park, it came with the promise of experiencing the jungle and wildlife whilst avoiding a heavy tourist trap. And the little piece of paradise in a town called Tallulah did not disappoint. We were quickly whisked up into the small group already staying at the lodge for a walking safari through the jungle, lake, and wetlands, after unnervingly just being told about the resident crocodiles and being shown the slide and burrow where the local aquatic reptile was living. I was slightly rattled, but was assured very oddly that crocodiles in the lake are harmless and only eat white mud. Being a bit of an authority on these types of things, I found that very hard to believe. Nevertheless, we traipsed through the jungle and the water and the mud. Not for everyone, but we thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. following day we were taken on a tour of the farm to see how they protected their crops from the marauding elephant herds, grew crops sustainably, and to also gather the ingredients for our cooking lesson. Our guide took quite some time to knock a mango from a tree. Finally succumbing to the use of a tool specifically designed to cut them down. Practical, but not as fun. The cooking lesson was great fun in a mud hut with a mud and cow dung wood stove. We cooked a pumpkin curry, an okra curry, a very interesting dish made from Thai eggplant, a salad made from wing beans of which we had never seen before, coconut and scorpion chili, and of course rice and papadums.
Smile at him. I'm recording, you're gonna have to pose.
That afternoon, we were very excited to be going on our Jeep safari. Having not so long ago been charged by an elephant, I was a little more hesitant than the others to get out of the Jeep and go walking up to the herd, of which there ended up being around 40 individuals. Our last day started with an early morning kayak. However, the night before rained quite heavily and also involved continuous elephant alarms and firecrackers to scare them away from camp. Not a good night's sleep at all. We left the jungle after retracing the crazy road in our tuk-tuk. They are not designed to four-wheel drive. We decided to go the long way to the south coast to ensure we had the experience of travelling the most famous highway that takes you through the centre of Yala National Park, and we were very glad we did. We arrived in a beachside town called Tangal, and we were very happy to see the coast. We decided to splurge a bit on accommodation, but the experience was one of the highlights of our journey, sleeping in a treehouse resort on the beach. The seaside town didn't have too much to offer other than amazing food, drinks, and the sea, but the relaxed and indulgent vibe was exactly what we wanted after roughing it in the jungle. Leaving Tangal after a couple of days, we headed to the next most touristy stop along the south coast, a town called Marissa. Full of beachside bars and restaurants, families and loads of European tourists, it was a bit of a shock to the system, but all in all, not a terrible experience. Once again, we were reiterated by the locals that the tourists are heavily skewed towards the Russian and Ukrainian persuasion, which most of the locals were not so pleased about for a variety of reasons. Once again, and probably the main vibe along the south coast, a relaxed and indulgent beach experience. What's going on with that head thing? Put your head up. Very quickly, heading towards the conclusion of our journey, we decided to break up the potentially 7-hour drive to Negombo with a stop into Gaul and finding somewhere north of there to stop for the night before our final day. Gaul, or Gaal, is a Dutch fortified city. We had an interesting experience exploring the Gaal fort and lighthouse, another trip back into their colonial past. We then drove north to a coastal town called Bentota, full of exclusive beach resorts that blinded the beach from everyone else. Not such a great experience, but we were simply there to sleep before heading back to our final destination, at Tuk Tuk Drop-Off and Negombo Beach for our final hours. Meeting up with an old friend, Shan, from our first couple of days, he was very glad to see us, and we treated him to a meal and drinks. Not only did we enjoy his company, but it helped rid us of our Sri Lankan rupees. All in all, a magical journey full of ups, downs, lefts and rights, and experiences we never thought we would have. Thank you, Sri Lanka and the Sri Lankan people, for such an amazing journey. We will be back.
Cobra chili.